The Sonic the Hedgehog franchise has had several spin-offs throughout the years. We've been on Roblox. We've actually played tennis. We've been on race cars before, channeling our inner Mario Kart. We've been on Roblox. Oh wait, this is Legos. So you get the gist. There's a lot of random Sonic games out there that you may have not heard of. In the last video, I tried to introduce 12 games that you guys haven't heard of. And in today's video, we're doing it again. So guys, let me know down below in the comments if you've gotten any of these games wrong or if there's at least one game you haven't heard of. Before we get into the video, please subscribe to the channel with all notifications on and smash the thumbs up. I'll give you a second. All right, with that being said, guys, let's get into all the games. So I don't know if you guys remember these amazing Sonic commercials that are in 144p right here, but Sonic Heroes did a little marketing campaign with McDonald's, and if you guys look, they had a bunch of LCD toys. Look at my boy Shadow go for the duck. Oh my god. So yeah, you guys see these little handhelds right here. So why don't we go through each and every single one? These handhelds were, by the way, made to coincide with the release of Sonic Heroes, which was my first Sonic game ever. So the Sonic McDonald's marketing campaign is actually how I got into Sonic. So it's actually really special, and we're going to start off with these games because I had all of them. So without me keep you waiting, let's get through these. So the first Sonic handheld game is Sonic Action Game. You guys see it right here. So this is what the game played like on the little LED device or LCD device, I don't know what they're called. So basically, this one was pretty simple. You basically jump up and down and try to get the rings. And this is essentially how all these games played. Honestly, the coolest part about these games was the outside design. If you look right here, they have these like cool designs. Like a lot of these were made based off of Sonic Heroes renders, but my favorites had to be these ones with like the more like etched in designs that are actually like real as opposed to just like plastering renders on them. These definitely were my favorite ones, but let's go through a lot of these games and just kind of give you guys an idea of what these were about. So next up, we got Knuckles Soccer. So Dr. Eggman is kicking soccer balls at LCD Knuckles, and you have to just like stop those. So that's the second game. Game number 3 is Shadow Grinder, and he's basically in Radical Highway, just grinding down the rails. You have to jump and land on them. These games were actually kind of difficult, I will say. Game number 4, we got Sonic Speedway. So this takes place on Route 99 or whatever it was from Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. And if you look, you got to basically steer as Sonic and avoid these things. Can you imagine how difficult this can kind of get when you're playing on these LCDs that move at 1 frame per minute, basically? And this was always the best part. When you messed up, every single like sprite that could appear would like pop up on the screen. Next up, we got Tails Soccer. So this is pretty much the same thing. You have Tails being the soccer player, and the Chow is kicking them at you. So that is the next game. Let's move on to game number 6. Game number 6, we have Knuckles Baseball. So Sonic is, honestly, it's kind of funny because Sonic had an affinity for baseball. During Sonic X, they had a baseball episode. Like, this is pretty cool. So basically, Sonic's hitting the baseballs, and Knuckles has to catch all the baseballs. Actually, kind of similar to the last scene in Sonic movie 2. So that's pretty cool. Let's move on to game number 7. Game number 7 is Big's Fishing in 2004. No surprise here, Big the cat who loves fishing has to reel up the fish. Every time you get them, I guess you get points or something like that. This game was pretty interesting. I actually think this is my favorite one because I definitely had most of these games growing up. But yeah, that's Big's Fishing. Let's move on to the next game. Next up, we have Knuckles Treasure Hunting. So Knuckles has to get the Master Emerald pieces, and it moves around a little bit, and you have to wait for the platforms to go down and up. So yeah, this one was pretty cool. I mean, like I said, these games are very simple, so you guys get the gist of most of them, but let's keep going. Next up, we got Sonic's Extreme Boarding, which is pretty much inspiration from the Genesis games and the special stages with Sonic 2. So if you look right here, Sonic's on a skateboard, and you have to get the rings, and you have to avoid the spikes. Literally, it's the Sonic 2 special stages. So this game was pretty cool, but let's just keep trekking along. Okay, let's go. Next up, we have Cream Flower Cat. So basically, Cream the rabbit is, well, actually, Cheese is dropping some flowers, and Cream has to catch them all. This game looks pretty simple, but these games did get difficult, and it would get to the point where you're just like, it gets almost impossible. So let's move on to the next game. I know you guys want to get through these LCD games. Next up, we have Tails Sky Patrol. Not to get confused with the Game Gear version of Tails Sky Patrol, which actually came out many years ago for the Sega Game Gear. And this game was kind of obscure too. You might not even have heard of this game if you're like a newer viewer or a newer Sonic fan. But the McDonald's handheld version of Tails Sky Patrol is also pretty similar as well. You guys get the gist, you get the rings, and that's pretty much it. So let's move on to the next game. Last but not least, out of the LCD series and the 12th game on this list, we have Amy and Rouge Tennis. This was another McDonald's handheld LCD game where Amy and Rouge play tennis. Doesn't get much more simple of a concept than that. So they play against each other in tennis, and let's move on to the next game. The next game is Rad Mobile. Now, this isn't necessarily a Sonic game, but this game has the first ever appearance of Sonic the Hedgehog long before his appearance in the 1991 platformer Sonic the Hedgehog, and honestly the start of a global mascot's legacy. So if you look at the screen right here, you see that we're racing, you know what I'm saying? I'm going fast, I'm racing in the car, but if you look at the little thing that's hanging from the mirror, what do they call those? They have a name for that? But yeah, if you guys look right there, that's actually Sonic the Hedgehog. So like I said, this game came out in 1990, but this was the first time that this character has ever been seen before. This is like a Sega arcade racing game. It's quite interesting to see that Sonic was at least conceptualized and put into a game long before his first game ever came out. So that is game number 13. Let's move on to the next one. Game number 14, we have Amazing Sonic. So as you guys see, if you guys look at this device right here, this game came out in 1994 and it was a classic Sonic LCD game. You could probably barely see the screen.
I cannot see, I'm legally blind.
But essentially, it kind of operates kind of like the special stages. You have to like collect the rings and stuff like that. And it had its own like standalone device. Look at classic Sonic right there. Look at him right there. Look how cool he looks right there. But yeah, this game came out in 1994. I'm sure you've never heard of Amazing Sonic. And if you have, then you need to go outside. So let's move on to the next game. Next up, we have Sonic 3D Blast. Now, this was actually made into a standalone LCD game for Tiger. And if you look here at this extremely poor quality of the game, it has similar backdrop from the game and it has that isometric look to it, but clearly it's just a regular LCD game where you have to move like back and forth and stuff like that. And honestly, it's kind of confusing. You see Sonic running around, but this is something that you've probably never heard of, and I know for a fact I've never heard of it. And by the way, it doesn't really look much like the original Sonic 3D Blast, but I gotta say, by the way, I hate this game, so I don't want to see this on my screen anymore. Let's just move on to the next game. Game number 16, we have a game called Sonic Jump. Now, this isn't the one that you may or may not know for the App Store. This one is a lot different. This one came out for Java devices. So this is what the game looks like. I like that artwork right there. It looks really good. And if you look here, it's got the Sonic Advance sprite, and it's just a simple doodle jump type game. Obviously, doodle jump was popular around the time that this game came out. But if you look at this game, I mean, it does look pretty fun, but they did eventually, I think, make a new Sonic Jump game. As a matter of fact, they did make a Sonic mobile game, and this one looks a lot better. It looks a lot smoother. This one was definitely optimized for more modern devices. You see that there's like new artwork and more like 3D-ish models in this game. So that's what that game was the prototype for, and stay tuned. There's going to be a lot more of that in this video as well. Next up, we have Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. But don't worry, this is not the Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing that you're thinking of. Similar to the other game that I just showed you, this one is kind of a prototype. Let me explain. So once again, we have Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, but this one was also a mobile Java game. So if you look right here, it looks kind of similar to Mario Kart GBA in terms of the like quasi 2D, 3D-ish, but they're really sprites kind of artwork. This game was pretty cool. I can't say I personally ever played this game, and I honestly didn't even know it existed, but it's crazy to think of how many mobile prototypes that they were experimenting with on Java devices that eventually translated over into actual games, or just like how they try to go cross-platform with certain things. If you think of like Sonic Unleashed Wii, Java, and Xbox 360. But let's move on to the next game. Next up, we have Sonic Advance. Now, this isn't the Sonic Advance that you're thinking of. Once again, there was a Sonic Advance mobile Java game. So this game looks very similar to the original. I believe this is just like a straight up port, but it looks like there is some differences between the games. It looks like he has a spin dash. He moves around pretty similar to how he did. I mean, his running animation looks the same. Sonic Advance, in my opinion, is one of the greatest Sonic games ever as far as 2D goes. Truly love this game, but this was once again a game developed for mobile, for Java. And, you know, frame rate doesn't look as good. It's not as optimized, but this is probably a game that you didn't know existed, considering this came out for the Game Boy Advance like 8 years prior. So that being said, let's move on to the next game. Next up, we have Sonic the Hedgehog 1. Part 1, actually. Yes, Sonic the Hedgehog 1. You didn't know this game existed, right? No, this game does exist as a mobile Java game. Now, the interesting thing about this game is that it's called Sonic the Hedgehog Part 1. So there's only 3 levels available in this game. But once again, this is a random Sonic the Hedgehog 1 port that you probably did not know existed, and looks kind of cool, but there's some weird little, like, I don't know. It doesn't look quite one-to-one, obviously, as the original does. Sprites look a little bit different, but I'm sure that this is a game you may or may not have known existed, because personally, I didn't know before I made this video. But let's move on to game number 20. Game number 20, we have Sonic Runners Adventure. Now, this is once again a prototype for a newer Sonic Runners game. You may or may not have heard of this game, but I'm sure you've seen this one. Let me show it to you guys real quick. This is the original Sonic Runners. Now, this is the game that you all probably remember. This is a game that they need to bring back. This game is better than Sonic Forces Mobile. Look at this, guys. Look at that artwork. Look at that art style. Had all the characters and stuff like that. This game had a plot. Like, this game was so much better, dude. I wish they would bring this back, because this is totally better than Sonic Forces Mobile. mobile. But yeah, the original prototype and frameworking was actually on Java mobile devices, so that's probably a game that you didn't know existed either. At least I hope you don't know it, because this is, if you don't know all these games in this list, then you need to touch grass or something, bro. But yeah, guys, that's 20 Sonic games that you probably never heard of before. Let me know if we should do a part 3 to this series. Let me know if you guys enjoy this type of content. Watch the videos on the end screen, and I'll see you guys soon.